Welcome to the madness of Deathwing fight. I'm not going to really go that much into detail with this fight. It has a lot of phases and a lot of stuff that's going on, but the whole limit on YouTube is going to be a little bit on the annoying side. One of the main things you need to pick up is that you need to make sure that you always pick up the ad in the back as quickly as possible. While I was standing here trying to explain the basics, actually was a little slow in picking up the ad in the back. When you get impale, you want to make sure if it's the first impale that you go ahead and pop a strong cooldown. In the beginning you'll have Dream, and you just want to go ahead and make sure you pop that Dream cooldown. And make sure that you can couple something small with it as well. Divine Protection works really well. Make sure you do not have a Divine Protection glyph. Right now I have a glyph, so it doesn't really matter. It's not going to give me that big of a difference. It's only going to do magical damage, and the impale is completely physical. Now, one of the big things is if you take a double impale, very few classes can actually survive it. As a paladin, you got all the tools you need to survive. Ardent Defender will allow you to survive regardless, and will keep you alive even if your DPS is low enough that you get a second impale, or your other tank is mentally impaired. As a tank, you can use some Holy Radiance when you're not currently tanking to help out the healing. In LFR mode, there's really no need to, because you're not going to really be having to deal with that much outgoing damage, and your healer should be able to deal with it anyways. In between the stages, when you're just DPSing the claw, there really isn't that much to do as a tank. Just sort of hit the claw, build up some holy power, play around. If you really feel special, you can toss off some Holy Radiances, but it's not really that required. Also, one of the things that you can do is make sure you know when the next corruption is spawning. There should be a DPM cooldown timer for you. As you can see, it's coming to the middle of my screen right now. That tells you basically when it's going to be coming up. Give yourself like a second or two to make sure you get back there, but after that, you can, stay up under your boss. Where I just ran back, you don't need nearly that much time. And on the next platform, I'll kind of show how I take off a lot of the time. Now, the other tank is taunting off, which would be nice that he's going to play that he's taking one of the impales. If, for instance, you find yourself taking an impale and you already have the impale debuff, what you need to do as a paladin is while he is casting impale, you can cast either your divine shield or your hand of protection on yourself. That'll make you completely immune to all incoming damage. However, one thing you want to make sure that you do is make sure that you can find your buff for divine protection. Make sure that you can take it back off. It's very important that if you divine protection yourself, or if you divine shield yourself, or sorry, hand of protection or divine shield yourself, that you're able to take that off so that you're not getting your melee DPS murdered by the tendon while you cannot have threat while you're immune. Another thing you can do is, if you really want to, you can spam taunt. That means that if you make yourself immune, you can keep the immunity for a little while by making sure that you taunt to keep it on yourself. It's a little bit more of a dangerous strategy, as if the ad loses the taunt buff at any point in time, it's going to attack someone else. It will still attack you while you're immune, so ideally you take less damage, but the timing is a little iffy, and if you get it just slightly wrong, he's going to one-shot one of your melee DPS, especially if that melee DPS happens to be something like a rogue or something that cannot take a melee swing from a boss. As I said on Spine, I'm going to be taking a momentary break, probably for a couple platforms, where I'm going to cut the video in the middle so that it's able to fit on YouTube. if I'm still running it from the cutaway, you might have seen me right there use Divine Protection and then make sure that the off tank was the one with secondary threat, and then make sure it was taunted on myself with my Hand of Reckoning while I had my immunity on. That on the last platform spawns fairly quickly in the back and always spawns in the same spot. Make sure that you go ahead and pick it up. If you can, if you're having to solo tank this, you want to make sure to use your Hand of Protection first, and that's really not for any particular reason other than the fact that you really want to have your Divine Shield as your get out of jail free card for this platform. If it happens correctly, what you're going to want to do with your Divine Shield is if you're still tanking, you're going to want to go ahead and Divine Shield that second impale, but you want to do it in such a way that you are also getting the Divine Shield to absorb the hit from the last Elementium Bolt as it comes in. See, the Elementium Bolt's coming on in. The off tank has it luckily, so I don't really have to worry about this. But as it comes in, it impales me and I bubble for it. Off tank has second, and then I just keep it either on me or on the off tank at all times and go back to tanking as normal. In some situations, you're going to want to try to kind of double up, make sure the Divine Shield is also on you when that blast happens. And LFR, again, the damage is really muted, so it doesn't really matter that much. Something you can do if you have another tank that's tanking with you is if that other tank is actually taking impales and doing their job as they're supposed to, you can either macro in or just kind of click on them and hit Blessing of Sacrifice. Blessing of Sacrifice, if you're not tanking, will be very beneficial to the other tank, especially if they're a little under-geared or they have to be like a warrior, which is a class that takes a fair bit of damage from impale as compared to like a Death Knight or another Paladin. So just go ahead and toss the Hand of Sacrifice on them when they're taking an impale. It's up often enough that you can Hand of Sacrifice your off tank every time they are taking an impale, as long as you guys alternate back and forth, which is ideally what you should be doing on this fight, assuming that your DPS is not good enough to just go ahead and burn through. While I was talking, I wasn't switching to tentacles like I should be because I'm a bad player. Here on the last platform, there's some fairly simple things you need to do. You can try to help DPS the Elementium Fragments, and that's all well and good. You're not really going to do that much to them, but go ahead and try. One of the big things is that when you see the Elementium Tears, I should say next summon Elementium Tears on your Deadly Boss mods, you want to make sure that you've got 3 Holy Power. If you don't, you can go ahead and pop your Divine Plead and make sure you have an instant gain of 3 Holy Power. You want to pop up and taunt one of them to yourself, and then Shield Slam, or sorry, Shield of the Righteous it fairly hard. You want to make sure that both of the ads are tanked inside of the yellow circle. See what the Death Knight right now is taking him outside of the yellow circle. It means that he's going to take a lot more damage. You can see him over on the left in the raid window. He's going to take a lot more damage. This is not in the yellow getting slowed down than I am. When you get multiple stacks of that debuff, right now I have 5 on me. You want to make sure to pop your Dream or another strong cooldown. And as soon as your debuffs reset, you want to taunt off the other tank. I don't know if you can see over in my grid on the left-hand side, but that Death Knight was taking an extreme amount of damage from that dot. One of the reasons that I don't have my Divine Protection, or I have my Divine Protection glyph, is for that debuff. When you're solo tanking, or when even when you're tanking normally, it's very helpful to get the Divine Protection benefit from that debuff, as the debuff is doing most of the damage when you're tanking the ads. Generally speaking, your DPS will be good enough that you don't have to deal with a second set of ads, and as the tank, you generally don't have to deal with shrapnel either. There's a shrapnel coming in to hit me, and I'm not going to hit Dream, so you can just see how much damage it does to me. It doesn't really even hit that hard enough for me to pay attention to it. and it's much more useful to save your dream for when you're tanking the terrors. And that's the Deathwing fight.